me get rid of the fan fiction that I was reading before this. So I filmed a video previously, and then I edited like half of it, and then I took a break, and then I thought harder about it, and I was like, I don't know if I like this video anymore. And then I went away for like 6 weeks, so it kind of like became scrapped because of that. I think it could be fun to do a little overview of all of the books I read while I was away during those 6 weeks. There's a few books, but a lot of them are 200 pagers, so I think it sounds more impressive than it actually was. Sorry, I just got a notification from the score about NHL free agency next season because I'm a fucking loser and I'm a Canadian. So anyway, I also have a blanket that I have to frog a section of, so that's what this is for. And I was doing it while watching a YouTube video, and I was like, you know what? Maybe this is the perfect time for me to refilm an introductory YouTube video. I just realized my mic is here and the sound of the yarn is right here, so you might hear that, but that's fine. Who cares? I was away for about 6 weeks of the summer, visiting some family in Europe, and I read some books during that time. The first one that I read was the one and only Conclave by Robert Harris, a classic to many, a way of life to many, both in like spirituality and also in fandom, I guess. I don't know, my rating system is very vibes based. Especially recently, I've just been kind of like, I've not put too much thought into the star ratings I give things, because there's times when I look back and I'm like, well, I gave this book a 4, but I think I enjoyed it more than a book I gave like a 4.25 or something like that. Oh well. Conclave I gave a 4 stars. For those who don't know what Conclave is about, the little book summary is: the Pope is dead. Behind the locked doors of the Sistine Chapel, 118 cardinals from all over the globe will cast their votes in the world's most secretive election. They are holy men, but they have ambition and they have rivals. Over the next 72 hours, one of them will become the most powerful spiritual figure on earth. And boy, did one of them become the most powerful spiritual figure on earth. This book was so fun. It was like kind of like mystery vibes. There's power struggle about, like identity and politics and ideology, and like the differing ideologies that emerge when things are so open to interpretation. Like, I went to Catholic school for 8 years. I'm not Catholic, but we talked about dogma and I guess the ideas that emerge when you have one spiritual figure who is meant to be the be all end all, but there's also human, flaw and inherent bias that's going to come into that. And it was a fascinating read. It was also you don't think it's going to be the type of book, or a movie for that matter. I watched the movie on the plane ride home and it was great. You don't think it's going to be the type of thing that's going to be like fun and kind of catty, and so many of these cardinals have essentially like mean girl clique tendencies. But it was great. I had so much fun reading it. I gave it a 4. I think I honestly could give it higher. But yeah, it was a great book. Okay, I've come to a standstill here. Hold on a sec. For those wondering what my project is that I have to frog a section of, I might be minorly into the Vancouver Canucks, and I might have minorly done a bit of a blanket, like a win-loss blanket for their season. Of all the seasons to choose, I chose a good one because they were so ass this season. But I made it way too big, and the yarn is so heavy, and I had a bit of, where I had joined the yarn, that it split. I'm an amateur crocheter, and so I'm not an expert. I'm not a good enough expert to be able to fix it. So I'm frogging a whole section of it, even though I still have 20 games left to crochet. So we'll see. Maybe my goal is to finish it by the start of next season. If it's not finished by a preseason game, I'm not going to get it done, because I'm going to want to start a new one, and I'm going to do it better this time. I'm going to use better yarn for it, and not make it so fucking massive. Anyway, so the second book I read, which was an audiobook, got from Libby, and it was called The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandana. And then the narrator in my audiobook version was Samara McLaren. It was a great audiobook. It was so fun. I don't know, it was lighthearted. It was exactly the type of thing that was good for me to have on my back burner as I was getting ready in the morning, or had a bit of downtime, from doing family stuff. It was good. I've come to a standstill again, guys. What is going on with this yarn? I'm just thinking about frogging the project, and then how long it's gonna take for me to get back on my shit of actually doing it. Oh, we're good. I probably shouldn't be so aggressive with it, but this yarn isn't great quality, so it's gotten very little fibers of one string of yarn have gotten very entangled with the other one, so you kind of have to yank in order to get it free. Yeah, you can see the issue. This is meant to be attached to the rest of the blanket, and it's not. But we move. we go about our day and we don't let it get us down. What was I talking about again? Oh yeah, Very Secret Society of Regular Witches. This was a fun read. I liked the romance. It was very lighthearted. I knew it was the type of thing I knew was going to have a happy ending, and so I was like, there was a bit of stake, there was some angst in there. I think one of the reasons why I gave it a 3.5, I think. The reason why it didn't get higher was because I do enjoy children. That sounds weird. I enjoy like spending time with kids, and I do think kids are so funny. Like they have flaws, but there's also like this inherent sweetness that they have. I get the kids are earnest, and a lot of the time they're quite innocent and naive, and sometimes they have things that they say that can strike you as like quite inherently like brilliant or philosophical without even meaning to, just because of their inherent innocence that a lot of them have. However, there were some moments reading this book, it did feel like a bit of like a and then everyone clapped moment. Like, like Ruth Conda, the Ruth Conda Forever moment. It was giving that a bit. It was just very like, yeah, like fucking Radikid is saying that. Not in like a mean way, but just, I don't know. There were aspects of this where I was like, this feels like someone who is writing only like the wishful thinking, like close, like bestie dynamics that kids will have with you. And there were aspects where I was like, yeah, okay, yeah, right. But aside from that, I think it was very cute. I think I would read more from this author. I love the narrator. The narrator did such a good job of doing the different accents, having very distinct voices for each character, so I could really tell who was who in the dialogue. It was a great read. It was fun. The next book I read during my trip was as part of a book club I was in with my friends, and it was Mexican Gothic by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. This book I gave a 3.5 as well. I loved the atmosphere. You could definitely tell that there's Gothic novel, something spooky's going on. I think the conversations it had, touching on like the inherent like, colonization, racism and colorism of it all. It had some great conversations about that. It's about a girl named Noemi who goes to see her cousin who is in the Mexican countryside, and there's just weird stuff going on with the family and her cousin's illness. Her cousin sends her this letter and says that she needs to save her, and Noemi just goes to investigate what's going on. It has really good mystery vibes. I think the house has such an interesting atmosphere for it. One of the family's sons becomes Noemi's friend and kind of, alludes to some of the weird things going on, the secrets that the family has and stuff. And it was a great atmosphere. However, me and my friends all felt that the kind of resolution at the end could have happened quicker. It felt like the last 20% or so really dragged on. So that made us all give it like 3 and 3.5. I would say the first, it took me a bit to get into it, and then I got into it and I was really invested, and then I was like, I already know how this is going to turn out, and it feels like we're just dragging on a conclusion that is what I was expecting. The next book that I read while I was away was the book These Violent Delights by Mika Niemerever. Like the name like Niedermeyer. I think the guy in Animal House, National Lampoon's Animal House, I think his name is Niedermeyer. I also think of like the hockey player Scott Niedermeyer. I always think this guy's last name is Niedermeyer and it's Niemerever, and I just get confused. It's hard to keep track of things. This book, These Violent Delights, it is touted as The Secret History meets Call Me By Your Name, which is interesting. Honestly, I did enjoy this book. I did give it a 4-star. The dynamics I thought were so interesting. I think it's so interesting to see the mentality, like it leads you into just watching as these guys go down this path. I should say what it's about first. It's said to be a feverishly taut Hitchcockian story about 2 college students, each with his own troubled past, whose escalating obsession with one another leads to an act of unspeakable violence. It's about Paul and Julian, who meet as freshmen, and you follow Paul's point of view as he meets Julian, and he just immediately becomes enraptured with him, and he wants to impress him, he wants to be his friend, and more. Yeah, it was I enjoyed it as a read. I'm trying to think of the reasons I give it. I don't know. It's just, I think it didn't have that wow factor for me to make it a 5. I don't know. Eventually it gets to a point where I don't know how much development there was into the kind of expressions of that dynamic and how one-sided it was, and it becoming more or less one-sided. And I think just certain character attributes, there was no development there, and it just kind of stayed the same, and like leading up to the big thing that happens at the end. And something just like that character arc made me maybe not give it a 5, but I still really enjoyed it. I would still like recommend it if it sounds intriguing, if you're into like that kind of like be gay, do crime, dark academia. If that sounds like up your alley, and if you want like toxic relationships of people being like all like hoity-toity pretentious when like they're also the problem, I think you'll enjoy it. I realize my descriptions of these novels have gotten like more succinct. I'm honestly, I can't handle reading off of the screen right now. Like reading entire summaries off of screens, and some of the summaries have been longer than others, and I've just gone, no, I'm just gonna read. I'm just gonna go off the dome. So the next book I read was Junkie by William S. Burroughs, to be precise. God, how did I feel about this book? I gave it a 4-star. It's basically about this. It's about like it's a fictional but also largely autobiographical account of Bill Lee, who he is basically describing his account of addiction and going through, these different cities that he was experiencing his addiction in, also while engaging with his sexuality, but also hiding it because this was, in the 50s. It just talks about like drunk sickness, his experience, getting off the junk and then getting back on it. And it's just like a look into, I guess, the psychology of an addict. And it feels weird to say that I enjoyed this, but I think it was an interesting read. It's also like it's a book that you could probably speed through because it is about, I think, 150 pages if I remember correctly. And I also I had a scholarly introduction and afterward because I'm a hashtag academic like that. But it's just it ends so abruptly as well. I think this is the type of book where if you're interested in like beat writers and like getting into that kind of period of American writing and you're willing to read like kind of sometimes an insufferable personality but also get an insight into addiction to, I think, heroin and morphine and stuff like that, it was an interesting read. After that, my Hold On Libby of Queer by William S. Burroughs came in, and I was like, perfect. I just read Junkie. Now I'll read Queer. And honestly, I gave Queer a 3.5. It got to a point where I get it, but also I think I had enough William S. Burroughs. I think I just can't in the future. I would not. I don't know. If you like really love his style, sure, you can go ahead and read Queer and Junkie like right after the other. But oh boy, by the time I was getting towards the end of Queer, and it's like you can see just the dynamics that are being formed between him and Alderton, and it got to a point where I was like, leave him alone, man. Like, I don't know, some of the dynamic, and then like also this one touches on the addiction aspect as well. It was an interesting book, but I also was like, man, it got to a point where I was like, man, I'm just like tired of reading this guy's writing and this guy's style. I need to take a break from him. And I think I had had enough of him by the time I was finishing up the book, and that is why I think the rating suffered a bit. If you don't know what this book is about, it's about, again, like fictional but also largely autobiographical Bill Lee, who he kind of has this attraction to a college student named Alderton, and they kind of form a relationship and they travel to South America. And then the last book I read while I was away, I finished it on the plane ride home. So technically was, literally over the seas when I finished it. It was Sunburn by Chloe Michelle Howarth. I really enjoyed this one. I gave it a 4.5. For those who don't know, it's about a girl named Lucy who is from, she's in Ireland. She's an Irish Catholic family, and it takes place during the 90s. And so there's certain like kind of expectations for what she's meant to do, who she's meant to marry. It kind of touches on girlhood and the dynamics of friendships, but in high school, but then also the dynamics when she falls for one of her friends, Susanna, and the kind of complications that relationship comes with, kind of the guilt and trying to put yourself into a box that doesn't fit you. Reading this as someone who has kind of felt aspects of, just general like being raised with like that kind of thought of, okay, well, what about hell? What if I do this and I go to hell? This was a great read. I think especially if you have that level of like religious guilt, and even if it's not necessarily based on like sexual identity, if you've ever thought about anything to do with that and quite had to deal with guilt over things, I think it's a great read. It'll really touch on some of the feelings that you have had. And even if you haven't experienced that, I think it isn't hard to put yourself in the shoes of someone who has experienced that. I gave that one a 4.5. There we go. That's everything I read while I was away. Yeah. Assuming I haven't already posted my initial, I did like a booktube newbie tag. Do you actually still want to see that, or if it is up, at this point. You can go watch it. There we go. That's the section I need to get to. If you've read any of the books that I read, tell me your thoughts in the comments below. I know I didn't do the greatest job of describing them. This was a kind of like off. I originally wanted to film this video with more preparation of what I was going to say, but this was kind of a bit of a spur of the moment. Like, I just want to film something while I am wrapping up yarn. Yeah, sorry if I like really did your favorite book dirty and I didn't give a very good explanation of what it's about. If you want to correct me in the comments down below and yell at me, feel free. So this has been Basil or Basil, depending on your persuasion. And I hope you have a great rest of your day and or night. Take care.